Again, joined by my friend Eric Litwiller. Eric, good morning.
Good morning to you, JJ.
I
Good to
love
see you.
I love this series that we're doing on mental health. You are the person I love to speak to about it because you do what for a living, sir?
Well, I work for, and now we're actually called Mental Health America. That's a change from Mental Health Association. So, new name, but still doing the same things at Mental Health America. And luckily, we can still be called MHA. That worked out really well.
Can you do mental health apostrophe America and just drop the A? Have you thought about doing that?
You know what? Then we have to get new business cards and
Okay.
new
Oh,
letterhead. It's a
fine.
whole thing,
And that's
JJ.
expensive. That let's face it,
It is expensive.
that
As
is
a
very
nonprofit, we can't afford to be doing that.
okay. Well, this is actually a good lead in then because New Year, we're just a couple weeks into the new year, and you have had some changes on your work front. People go through changes in the
Yeah.
work front and they go through changes in the personal front at the beginning of the year because we're all gung ho about, I guess, reinventing ourselves, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, tweaking. I don't know. Yeah, this is a time when people are kind of seeing a new, fresh start on the calendar and decide to kind of do some things different in their lives. So, if January 1st is the landmark that works for them, then that's fantastic, whatever it takes.
I think this time of year too, because it just seems to be a popular time to do it. I think the first step we take is okay, maybe reflecting back on the year that was. And that unto itself can be kind of a downer at times, right?
It can. I think, people have a tendency to kind of think about where they want to be or who they want to be and compare it to where they were yesterday or last year or
Mhm.
5 years ago. And if it's not exactly what they want, it can feel very overwhelming for some people. And frankly, it can make them very anxious. It can make them feel very depressed. And I think that's a big part of the reason why things like anxiety and depression are chronically by far the two most common mental illnesses or mental health issues that we face as a country, as a state, as a city.
Mhm.
Um, those things kind of make us feel like we're not achieving everything we want to or don't know how to achieve what we want to, and so that anxiety and depression just kind of sets in.
You know, in sitting here listening to you talk, maybe as we try to think of how we can do this coming year differently, we're also doing it at a time where the days are shorter, it's colder.
Yeah.
Maybe let's say the Chinese, for instance, their New Year doesn't start for like another, I think in February, I think. They wait a little bit till the days start getting longer. I don't know whether there's any science to
Right.
that or not, but you start looking back and you start beating yourself up for the things you didn't accomplish in 2023.
Right.
How do we give ourselves grace? How do we give ourselves grace to say, you know what? Okay, we didn't do it, but it's okay.
Yeah. That's always tough. We're always our own worst critics.
Mhm.
That's true of every human being on the planet, I think. And that's a difficult question because it's really easy, I think, for a lot of us to give other people grace, but for us, maybe we have higher expectations of ourselves. But we need to be realistic, and I think a big part of whether you choose to call it a resolution or ultimately it really is a goal, and
Mhm.
we all have goals. Um, I think it's important to understand the I don't want to really call them the tricks, but kind of the important things to remember when we're setting goals for ourselves.
Mhm.
If you haven't achieved the goals you have so far, rather than beating yourself up, set a new list of goals or one goal or however many it is, but do it in a smart way, and it will make you so much more apt to be able to achieve those goals, and then you don't have to worry about beating yourself up because now going forward you've hit those goals because you've done it in the right way.
Mm.
And I think that's a really important point for people to remember.
So, if I'm listening correctly, it's not so much the size of the goal that is as important as it is to have a plan. Does that sound about right?
I think that's absolutely right. Even small successes can make us feel very, very good about ourselves.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, we're setting goals that are important to us. And if something small is important to you, then achieve the small thing. If something big is important to you, then achieve that. And again, there are smart ways of hitting those bigger goals too. Oftentimes, frankly, breaking them down into smaller goals.
Hmm.
So regardless of the size, that's really not the issue. The point is setting the goals in a way that sets you up for success. Now you're hitting those goals. Now you feel successful. Now you don't have that anxiety and depression anymore. And
Hmm.
it really gives you a strong and a motivated platform on which to build future successes.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we're not, it's not just goals like places you want to visit or things like that. These are
Right.
these are these are personal goals. These are, you know, I want to lose a little weight. I want to quit smoking. I want to be a better friend or husband or wife or what have you. Um, how do you navigate this without stressing out over it? Like there's got to be a level of peer pressure here to, well,
Sure.
I see John in the office and John seems to have all of his stuff together. John seems to be
Right.
doing great, you know,
Yeah.
but we don't know how John's doing.
Right. No, that's exactly right. The A really good way of remembering kind of how best to go about setting those goals. And a lot of people have probably heard this. The acronym is SMART, and what that stands for is make the goals specific, make them measurable,
Hmm.
make them attainable, make them relevant, and then make them time bound.
Mm.
So we can kind of unpack those a little bit. Specific and JJ, you just by happenstance happened upon the two most common New Year's resolutions we set for ourselves, and stopping smoking and losing
Mhm.
weight. It probably doesn't surprise you to hear that.
Right.
But so many people set them exactly in that way. They say, okay, in 2024, I want to lose weight.
Mhm.
Well, that is none of those five things. It's not measurable. It's not time bound. So we really have to set them in a way that allow us to hit a better chance of success. So when we're talking about making them time bound. Well, okay, I want to lose 25 pounds this year.
Hmm.
Okay, but when are you going to measure that? How are you going to measure that?
Hmm.
What are you going to do differently to ensure that you do that? So maybe instead we say, I'm going to lose 2 pounds a month.
Hmm.
Mathematically, it comes out to the same amount. But now every single month you're checking yourself. It's just like having a budget.
Hmm.
If you don't refer back to the budget, it doesn't help you. If you don't refer back to your weight loss goal, it's not helping you. So I want to lose 2 pounds. I want to do it by the end of January, and I want to do it again by the end of February and the end of March, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that is specific, that is measurable, that is time bound. So
Hmm.
you're hitting all those goals now, and you're doing it a way that you can check in with yourself. Um, Speaking of checking in with yourself, it doesn't hurt to tell some other people.
Okay.
Now, other people are holding you accountable to that as well. So
Hmm.
find someone you trust, a friend, maybe a trusted coworker. Let them know that this is your goal, and tell them you would like for them to check in with you and ask you how you're doing.
Hmm.
Every time someone reminds you that that was your goal, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's right. I meant to do that. I better, work on that. Um, the other thing that I think is really important in kind of that in that acronym is the importance of um, really, I said checking in with yourself,
Hmm.
um, but do have grace. You have to think about how you're going to do that, and so many people set this goal and say, I'm going to do this thing, even if it is I'm going to lose 2 pounds in the next month.
Hmm.
Okay, but how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
People don't think about the how, and if you just keep doing the same thing you've been doing for the last 10 years and expecting different results, so how am I going to do that? Am I going to exercise more? If so, what does that look like? Instead of walking a mile on Saturday morning, I'm going to walk a mile every day after work.
Hmm.
What am I going to eat differently to achieve? What does it look like? How do I achieve that goal? Not just what is the goal and when am I going to do that, but how am I going to do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Accountability is a straight motivator for sure. That SMART acronym, is it from Atomic Habits?
It may. I hear it so ubiquitously. I don't even know if I could tell you where it came from first anymore.
I think that's where I first saw it. Again, you're talking
Could
about
be.
small changes and small habits that will have a positive result. A great book to pick up at the beginning of this year is Atomic
Yeah, makes
Habits.
sense.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no shortage of self-help books out there, and probably a lot of them reference setting attainable and realistic goals. So I don't think you can go wrong in the self-help section.
So let's get a little personal. Have you set a goal, an expectation, a resolution this year, Eric?
I generally don't.
Okay.
And it's not that I think I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Um, what I will say, and I wanted to make this point anyway, so thank you for kind of leading me into it. I've never really been a firm believer in the concept of, hey, the calendar is turning over, the year is turning over. Let's use this as an excuse to start trying to better myself. If I decide on Tuesday, September 9th, that I want to do something in my life differently,
Mhm.
then I'm going to start doing it on Tuesday, September 9th. The date doesn't matter to me as much as the making the decision that I want to do something differently, setting the goal, thinking about how I want to achieve it, setting a time frame, and just doing it regardless of the date on the calendar.
Okay.
So I'm always trying to make myself better. I just don't automatically choose January 1st.
Sure, and that's good, and I'm going to throw this one at you as well. In our house, and this is something my wife Amy kind of steered me toward. I used to do resolutions, and I used to not have a
Yeah.
plan, used to not have a plan like you talked about, and well, those didn't go very well.
Yeah.
A few years back, she got me thinking about a word, picking a word
Oh,
to guide you through your upcoming new year. And over the last few years, that has really helped me focus in the sense I could refer back to that word and be like, okay, are you honoring that choice?
yeah.
So my word this year is undaunted. I have a couple of projects coming down the line. One, I'm undaunted in my determination to have as quick and safe recovery as possible from this ridiculous
Yeah.
rotator cuff surgery. You got to stay focused on that. But I've also got a book, an idea for a book that I've been wanting to write for 20 years, and I've started and
Oh,
stopped it.
wow.
Yeah, I've started and
Okay.
stopped it like 6 times and never got anywhere because I had a terrible plan. Like you say, it was not smart. It was not time, sensitive. It was all those things. It wasn't, and it never went.
Yeah.
It never went anywhere. So then this year, I developed an outline. So
Okay.
I could see how the story was going to develop, how the characters were going to develop, beginning, middle, and end, and then I can just kind of fill in the holes. I started that first of the year, and a couple weeks into the year now, I'm almost at 100 pages I've written, and it's flowing.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. So my word, undaunted, was to motivate me through these couple of things. Back to my original point, if you could choose a word for the year to guide you, maybe you already have, maybe you haven't, but is there a word out there that you can pick off the top of your head that would be a good word for you this year?
That's a really good question. I think if I was pressed, I would probably choose the very simple word of progress. I think, for me, it's really easy to to think about in a perfect world what my work would look like,
Mhm.
and just as quickly become overwhelmed by the just sheer volume of time and effort and everything else that it would take. And I have to remind myself, it's not, you're not going to achieve perfection in 2024,
Mhm.
but let's just aim for doing better in 2024 than we did in 2023.
Yep.
Not perfection, but progress. I
Yep.
will be very happy and content if I just do a little bit better this year than next year. I'd say progress.
Yep. There's a great Hebrew word I learned. Kadima means forward.
Uh,
Means forward.
yeah,
Keep moving forward, right?
absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
so with all of this on our shoulders, Eric, the anxiety and stress of doing something to have that progress, to achieve things, to set goals. Now we double that with less daylight, cold
Right.
temperatures, seasonal disorders that just bum us out. Let's talk about depression this time of year.
Yeah, yeah. Depression, seasonal depression, especially caused by exactly all the things you said, the temperatures and the short days and all that. It's a real thing. And I think people who either live with or know someone who lives with seasonal bouts of depression, it's really easy for people to say, oh, it's going to go away in April. It'll be fine. But, we need to remember as a society that these are bouts of serious depression. If you knew someone with serious depression, you would not dismiss it. And yet we do it every day because in Bob's case, we think it's going to go away in March or April or May, and so it's not a problem. But all the things that come with serious depression, even if it is only seasonal, while they are in it, it is still a bout of serious depression. And all the things that come along with that need to be taken just as seriously as anything else. Um, there are certainly ways of for a lot of people anyway to cope. There are special lights that you can buy on stores and online and that sort of thing, and you can find alternate ways of getting exercise. And
Mhm.
there's kind of DIY options, and obviously there's therapists out there. But the number one thing I would say when we're talking about with seasonal depression is take it seriously. It's something I live with myself,
Mhm.
and I knew I went through bouts of depression, but honestly, I had never considered the fact that they all tend to happen around late one year or early part of next
Hmm.
year.
Hmm.
It took a friend of mine to point that out to me before I realized that there was always this correlation between when they hit and when the calendar, what the calendar said. And I'd never noticed that before. So now that I realize that's an issue, I'm making active steps to try to address it in a way that I really hadn't done before.
And that is a good friend. We all need friends like that
Absolutely.
who will be honest with us and open with us. I mean, I think those are really healthy relationships. So staying there, I recognize that I've got someone in my circle of friends and family who's on the struggle bus this time of year, like you just
Yeah.
recognized. What are some of the little things we can do? I mean, what are some of the things we can do to maybe just not negate what they're going through, but just to help let them know that you're there and you're supporting them and you want to put a little light step or a smile on their face, you know?
Sure. Yeah. The biggest thing, and it sounds simple and it sounds trite, but it really is the concept of checking in.
Mm,
So many times people, when we're living with mental illness, the people around us just we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to help. And so we just you know, we kind of step away and we give you space and nobody knows what to do and so nobody does anything, no one
mm,
knows what to say and so no one says anything.
mm,
And that's exactly the opposite, because when someone is going through something like depression, seasonal or not, a big part of that is they're feeling isolated, they're feeling alone. And so when no one steps into that void and attempts to just reach out and communicate, send a quick note or an email or a text or a phone call, um, all that does is reinforce our preconceived idea that we're alone, even if it's not true.
mm, mm,
So even just someone stepping in and sending a quick note periodically, or every Saturday afternoon, just making a quick phone call,
mm,
anything that a friend can do uh, to remove that negative or that inaccurate idea that that person is alone, is isolated. Any kind of communication you provide, it doesn't have to be germane to the topic of mental illness or depression at
sure,
all.
sure.
Just saying hi, just seeing how you're doing, just hey, do you want to grab coffee this afternoon,
Hmm.
whatever it may be, just reminding them they're not alone and there's people out there. You would be amazed at what a difference something that simple can make.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, there are certain group texts that I don't like being on because I feel like I was kind of railroaded into them. But
Yeah.
there are other group texts in my life on my phone that are very important. There's a couple that my wife Amy and I cruised with, Jason and Joanne, and we communicate pretty regularly. Just what you said, saying hi, how you doing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's my couple of very good high school and middle school friends that I've stayed in touch with over the years. All season long during football, we had a group text for football, and
Nice.
and in listening to you talk, I never really appreciated the weight of it and the importance of it until now. Whereas, yeah,
Yeah.
we were talking football, but it was so much more than that. It was the hanging out, it was the laughing, it was the the emojis. It was just being there in a positive way. So you did, like you said, so you don't feel quite so alone, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's huge, and what, we talk all the time about how isolation is the number one enemy of good mental health.
Mm,
Um, but the other side of that coin is true as well. When we're dealing with difficult issues of mental health, mental illness, um, then we end up feeling isolated. So it's like I'm not sure still to this day which is the cause and which is the effect,
mhm.
but clearly they go hand in hand, and so offsetting one can very easily offset the other as well.
Yeah. The one thing I've bit of advice I've handed out to my daughter and other people. I'm a pretty friendly, approachable person, and I will walk up to somebody and ask the question. And it's one of life's most important questions, as far as I'm concerned. How are you?
Yeah.
But don't ask that question unless you're ready to sit there and stand there and get an honest response. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, I think you'll agree, people won't give you an honest response. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's the question we ask is we're, running down the hallway to our next meeting. We see someone, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And you're 20 feet past them
Yep.
before the sentence is even out of your mouth. You
Sit
know, but
down.
but the same thing is, I mean, when my boss is worried about me, that is the question she asks,
Hmm.
but she does it in a way that is, she comes in my office, she closes the door, she sits down in the chair, she puts her phone away, she looks me straight in the eye,
Hmm.
and she says, Eric, how are you?
Yes.
It's the exact same question, but it's done in a way that she's clearly demonstrating I'm putting away the distractions. I'm shutting off the outside world. I'm
Hmm.
sitting down to show you that I'm genuinely here.
Hmm.
You're not, a point as I'm going to my destination. You are the destination.
Yep.
And the beautiful thing about that, I mean, listen, she's our CEO. She's a licensed clinical whatever therapist. I don't know what all her initials
Lots of
are.
sheepskin on the wall. Yeah, I get
Yeah, exactly.
it.
But the thing is, you don't have to have those credentials to do
You're
exactly
right.
what it
You're
is that she
right.
does.
Yep.
Anybody can do exactly what she does in that moment. So it's not about what you're asking; it's about how you're asking and demonstrating that you actually want to know the answer. I love what you said that though, because I was talking to a good friend of mine at a company here in Wichita.
Huh?
I asked him that at actually the mental health summit that the Wichita Business Journal did here a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And I asked him that question, and he kind of hesitated, and he goes, Eric, he said, since I've gotten to know you, when people ask me that question, I always answer it honestly. So he
Hmm.
said, I'm not sure right here in this moment if you're asking to be friendly or if you're asking because you really want to know the answer. And I'm like, Robert, no, hey, man, tell me the real answer. And we
Yes.
sat down in the empty conference room at the Kansas Leadership Center, and he told me how he was doing. And it was fantastic. I wish everybody would do that.
Because there's no right time,
Right.
to get that stuff. Because you could be at a conference, you could be at a meeting, you could be at a restaurant and hurting on the inside.
Yeah.
So why wait to ask that question? Now, on the flip side, what you were saying, if you are a recipient to that question and the person asking that question has done what your boss has done and giving you 100% of their focus and leaned in and been like, okay, Eric, how are you? At that
Yeah.
point, you cannot say fine. At that point.
No, you're right. And believe me, I know that because I try. I try to, oh, I'm flying to work. But I don't know if it's because of who she is or
Right.
just my affection for her or the way that she but when she does that, I cannot not tell her full blown what and I want to just say I'm fine so that she can go about her day and do the 800 things she has on her agenda.
Yep.
But for some reason, her and my mother are the two people that I cannot just say I'm fine to. I'm
Mhm.
going to tell them, no matter how hard I try to fight it sometimes.
And in turn, you're giving them a gift. You're giving them a gift of making them feel like they can help.
I
Right?
hope so. I
Yeah, I,
hope
I think
so.
that. So listen, we there's lots we could talk about. Obviously, this is a great topic. Any sort of mental health discussion is an important and great and worthwhile topic.
Yeah.
So this time of year, shorter days, resolutions, the pressure of them, all of it. In recapping, little incremental, smart, logical steps with goals that are achievable for those resolutions, or pick a word to help guide you through the year. Ask someone with sincerity how they're doing, and
Yeah.
if someone asks you with sincerity, be brave in that moment. And if you're feeling like crap or having a tough day, tell them.
Tell them, absolutely.
Yeah.
And listen, going back to those resolutions, one last point I will make is, if you do choose January 1 to set them, that's fine.
Mhm.
And if you're going along and Tuesday, let's say you wanted to stop smoking, and Tuesday you have a cigarette, that doesn't mean that you have blown your resolution for
Right.
the year.
Right.
Doesn't matter when it happens. February 19th,
Yep.
you accidentally had a cigarette, you couldn't fight the urge. You know what? January 20th is a new start.
Yep.
You
Yep.
had a Twinkie on June 3rd.
Yep.
June 4th is a new start.
Yep.
You didn't fail your resolution because you dropped the ball one time. Tomorrow is a new day and it's a new start just as much as January 1st is.
Yep. You can't do anything about yesterday, but you can certainly, do something about how it all ends,
Amen.
how the story ends for sure.
You got
So
it.
the next time we're going to chat, it's going to be post my surgery, and I think it's going to be a really good discussion because it kind of fits in some of the stuff I've been going through, and it's probably the biggest surgery I've had, rotator cuff surgery, but there are obviously
Yeah.
much greater medical procedures out there. So next time we chat, Eric, I want to talk about the angst and the depression and the stress and all of it that goes with stuff leading up to surgery, and
Yeah.
then the recovery, the convalescence, and the idea of being patient. And if you're not patient, all the pitfalls that can come along with that and not being able to do the things you used to be able to do. So that's going to be a good discussion. I'm looking forward to that.
As am I.
And so if people have any questions, want to get in touch with you, what's that web address again?
Yeah, so it's still mhask.org. That hasn't changed with the name change to Mental Health America. And certainly, I always offer to people. I may not be, a licensed therapist with the sheepskin on my wall, but to the extent that I'm the one who's kind of out there for MHA, I'm always more than happy to be the liaison to
Mhm.
folks. So if you ever need to get a hold of someone directly, feel free to call my office directly at 651-1241. Tell me what's going on. I know everybody at MHA. I will get you to the right department. I will get you to the right person. I am happy to be the liaison for folks who are struggling and having trouble navigating, all the morass of automated menus that exist in this world. That
Mhm.
number gets you directly to my office, and I'm happy to distribute your note to the right person and help you out that way.
It's all part of that progress you were talking about.
Amen.
All right.
Absolutely.
Eric, great talking with you. Enjoy the next few weeks. We'll chat again and talk surgeries next time we get in touch.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Jerry. You take care.